Rodney was on his way down. Let's see what happened. This is a public service announcement. Adrian Benepay is a criminal, a real estate agent privatizing and selling our public parks to help Mayor Bloomberg's richest friends get even richer.
Can I ask you to?
No, you can't,
Yes,
and I'd
I
advise
would
you
like
not to touch me.
I will not touch you. I ask
Good, you could
to
ask
leave.
whatever you want. Bloomberg stole my rights. Adrian Benepay is a real estate agent illegally selling off public park property to help the richest New Yorkers get richer. This panel is a bunch of stooges that are part of the privatization agenda that are here to pretend it's a panel discussion. It's a conversation of stooges that are looking to convince people that their crimes are some kind of public service.
You are stealing our
Don't
rights.
touch me.
Why not?
Because you may regret it. Take your hands off me, buddy.
You're stealing our rights.
Sit your ass down.
Hey, sir. Step with me, please.
No.
Sir, I need you to step with me.
No, I won't.
Sir,
You a police officer?
I will get 911 here.
Go ahead and get him. What do I care? Adrian Benepay has had me illegally arrested numerous times. This will not be the first.
Sir,
Yeah.
please.
Step away. Make your call. Do whatever you think you're going to
How
do.
you doing?
Interrupting everybody.
Make sure you don't put your hands on me.
1220 Fifth Avenue?
It's a real estate scam meant to cheat the people of New York out of their public parks.
103 and 104 on Fifth Avenue?
Thank you. Thank you for your applause. Thank you for your applause. Thank you for your applause. I appreciate it. I appreciate your applause. I really do. Thank you for your applause.
The event that's going on at the museum?
Fuck off.
Excuse me?
You heard me.
It's all right, because I'll have them lock you up.
What?
I will have them lock you up.
I'm going to have you sued. It's a public meeting.
Yeah, I have a gentleman that's actually in the building holding up a sign and screaming, and he's...
How you doing, Adrian? You're here to lie to these people, to tell them your bullshit about privatization?
Sir, I cannot have that. He just came off with sugar, that's all you want.
I ain't afraid of your opinions.
Patricia, do me a favor. Can you come inside the building? Rivera. Museum of the City of New York. Yeah, pick up Jeff.
Unlike a lot of New Yorkers, I'm not afraid of your opinion.
917-846-7689. Sir, why don't you just put the sign down?
And then what happens?
And then we can talk about this on the side.
Kiss my ass. How's that?
That's fine. Hello? Yeah, could you please get him here? Okay.
I think we should let the commissioner continue.
Yes, let him continue.
Yes, but...
By all means.
So watch the language, all right? But I'm not cursing at you.
Step out of my way and I'll stop talking.
I'm here.
Step out of my way
Asking
and
you
I'll stop
nicely.
talking.
I'm asking you nicely.
Step out of my way. I'm asking you nicely.
Step outside.
I ain't
and we can
stepping
talk about this
outside. That ain't going to happen.
Then I'll have the NYPD do it.
And the way that's going to happen is in handcuffs.
That's fine. That's fine. It works for me. It works for me.
Go ahead, Adrian. Tell them your bullshit story.
Sir.
Tell them how you got to get all this money to build luxury condos.
Sir.
The Central Park Conservancy is a white-collar mafia, a criminal conspiracy.
That's it.
Go ahead, let him speak. I'm not stopping him.
Let them speak. Let them speak.
I haven't heard him say anything yet.
Because you're not letting them speak. Let them
Sit
speak.
your ass down.
Excuse me?
Sit your ass down.
I'm not sitting anywhere. So you do what you feel you need to do. Because you lay a hand on me, you're getting
I ain't
locked.
laying a hand on you.
All right, then.
I work with my mouth.
I understand that.
It's called free
And
speech.
I understand.
Try
free
reading
speech.
up on it
But
some
you know
damn
what?
time.
Let the people
I'm
up
not
here
stopping him from speaking. You're the one that's making me yell. I got news for
I'm not
you.
but I have to be here.
Step away from me and I'll be quiet.
I don't have to be.
No, I don't have to
step
shut
away
up
from
either then.
Okay.
You're the one that's keeping Adrian, the real estate agent Benepe, from speaking.
To be allowed to have NYPD responded to the
Mayor Bloomberg stole my rights. That's why I'm here. Bloomberg stole my rights. And I'm here to tell you about it, whether you like it or not. This is what you get when you harass artists. And believe me, we're going to follow you every place you get up to make your moronic speeches. We're going to expose you everywhere.
We've heard you. Now go home.
I am home. I'm a New Yorker. I'm here to defend the parks from these criminals.
Sir, work with me. Look at me. Give me 1 second.
Are you so dense you don't realize I don't care what you're
I
saying?
understand what you're saying.
So why do you keep saying it? I've stood up to 100 cops at once. You think I care what you're saying?
That's fine. That's fine.
Go ahead, Adrian. Say something intelligent, please. Tell him how you were an illegal hot dog vendor before you became commissioner. That's how he started. An illegal hot dog vendor in Central Park. Now he's a flunky for the Central Park Conservancy and a real estate agent for Mike Bloomberg. That's what he is. And this academic is here to pretend that there's some rational explanation. You touch that sign, I'll lay you out.
So you're the only one that counts.
Right now,
How dare you?
yours counts.
You haven't even introduced yourself.
Who are you?
Where are you from?
Who did you lay out?
Community gardens.
I'm the president of the street artist group that this jackass has been persecuting for his entire career.
Lay one hand on me, and you'll be.
Benepe is a criminal. That's the bottom line. He's a flunky for the Central Park Conservancy.
Everybody, we're going to proceed with this program. We have had an
1220. Is it called? Yes.
Go ahead, speak. Tell them your magic words about illegal hot dog vending and how it got you here.
Have some protesters here who are uncooperative, and before anything happens, I need a couple of cars here. Okay.
This is a criminal trying to steal our parks.
Trying to take the guy out? No, not at this time.
It's all about your ego and not about learning or talking about it.
You're not going to learn anything here. I got news for you. This is a fake panel. These people are all being paid by the city to lie to you and trick you into thinking they're trying to support your parks. They're stealing your parks. Your grandchildren won't even be able to go into a park.
Your idea of free speech is over, so we don't say.
Wait till you've been arrested 43 times for speaking. Your support isn't worth anything to me. Could care less what you think.
Nuts do not help.
I'm a patriot, and this is a criminal.
Right people that
attacking me? What do you want me to attack the audience? What do you even think you're doing? You're agitating me worse.
agitated.
You are. You have no concept of human
I
psychology.
understand that. I have to have the horn.
I'm not keeping you from speaking. I want to hear what you have to say. Drivel that it may be, how you lied every second of that deposition. You committed perjury from 1 minute to the next throughout that deposition. You're a perjurer and a criminal.
Robert, I mean, Melissa, the councilman, I mean...
I respect her.
No, I'm just
Can you
asking.
just wait, Robert? I think people here want to also, there's people here that are going to ask really serious questions.
No, I mean, do you want to know? I'm just asking, are you going to wait till the NYPD comes?
That was the idea.
I mean,
You don't seem to be showing up. Where's the response time in this city?
all right. Well, that's obviously your option. But I mean,
I'm willing to stand here totally quietly and let them lather their crap. Yes, let them talk. Tell them. You could tell them yourself. I said he could talk. I won't interrupt him. I won't interrupt him. I promise. I'm going to stand by the flag. That's all I'm going to do is stand right here. Sure.
We are going to try to speak, and I think you will find it interesting. And I'm going to again ask the commission. How has the park system of New York changed over the last 30 years?
I guess in the 1970s there was a civility of discourse. Sadly missing now, but seriously, a lot of the discourse. Well, it's changed a great deal. The city of today is not like it was in the 1970s. We were all kind of worried about the future of cities in the 1970s. I think many of us who have lived here all our lives remember what it was like. The parks and the rest of the city, subways were all in terrible shape. The economy was in tatters and going down. I think the major point is that you're starting at a very poor baseline and then descending from there. And fortunately, things started to turn around. And they really started to turn around under a series of parks commissioners. I have to always give credit to my predecessors. First, under Mayor Koch, who first reported to Gordon Davis. And Gordon Davis had many important initiatives, and one of them was figuring out what does the city do well, what does it not do so well. And one of a good example was,
Get ready, Jack.
the city didn't do a very good job with the golf courses, and Gordon Davis figured out that you could have a private sector one of the golf courses and save a lot of money on better golf courses. The other thing that has changed a great deal is that the city is much safer. People aren't afraid to go to the parks. Parks used to be scary places, including prominent parks like Central Park and Prospect Park. The system is larger than the one in the 1970s, and the city gave away gateway to the federal government because there was a feeling we couldn't do a good job taking care of it. And now the city is in dialogue with the National Park Service about how we can work together to do a better job at gateway. There has been a huge investment in the parks, beginning with the Koch administration, first under Gordon Davis, then under Henry Stern, who were the two commissioners who served under Mayor Koch. But in particular, the thing that started under Mayor Koch, which is sort of set the tone, not just for this city, but for many cities, was the involvement of citizens in the life of the park. Prior to the 1970s, government
Talk to me right here if you want.
No, I want to talk to you outside.
Well, I don't want to go outside. I ain't going outside unless you drag me out there.
Oh, come on.
Public meeting, I have a right to be
Okay, I
here.
understand that.
I'm not interfering.
I want to make sure.
I'm not stepping outside.
Okay.
So you can drag me away when nobody's looking? You think I'm not naive?
Oh, come on. Listen. Okay.
We are going to, if they want you out of here, and it's their
That's
ground.
between you and them, not me.
No, it's between you and me.
No, it ain't.
Okay?
I'm here. I ain't going anywhere.
Gordon Davis did a couple of things, and one of them was
How you doing?
find park administrators.
Officer Nicoletti. What
Those
precinct?
administrators
23rd?
directly involve citizens.
I hope I don't have to sue you.
And effectively, they said, government by itself probably can't do a good job. And citizens need to get involved. That happened all over the city. It happened with block associations, with tree planting, with lots of other things. The other thing that's changed, and that led the way to things like partnerships with parks and volunteer groups. There are now volunteer groups associated with fully half of the city's parks. And it led to the creation of groups like the Central Park Conservancy and the Prospect Park Alliance, but not just those groups. The Bronx River Alliance and the Greenbelt Conservancy and groups involved with parks in Van Cortlandt Park and Pelham Bay Park. So the idea that citizens could play a prominent role in the life of the park was really cemented in those days. That was very important. A tremendous investment, probably $5 or $6 billion in the capital budget, starting with Mayor Koch and continuing to the present day. We've spent $3 billion just in the last few years alone building new parks and restoring old ones. So the parks of today are in much better shape. The system is much larger. And finally, I think the difference between now and the 1970s was that in the 1970s, nobody spoke of parks. The Dr. Seuss book would say, I'm the Lorax, I speak for the trees. There's nobody really speaking for the parks. And now there are tens of thousands of people who speak of the parks, who are invested as volunteers, as community gardeners, as members of small neighborhood associations, as dues-paying members of groups like the Prospect Park Alliance or the Bronx River Alliance. So the fiscal landscape has changed, the financial landscape has changed, and the level of participation has changed. I also frankly say that the parks are much better managed, particularly from a technological point of view. There are inspection programs that go on, and forms of management didn't exist. Frankly, when I was here, I worked for the Parks Department in 1973, and the work attitude is not a very good one. Not a lot of work about that. And I think the Parks Department works better and more effectively now than it did in the 1970s. And that's, again, tribute to a lot of work done by my predecessors, Commissioner Stern, Godbound, and Davis.
Well, one of the things that I really like to ask Catherine is, we have a park system today that is much larger, has fewer people employed in it, and we are facing the kind of downturn again that was the case 30 years ago. How does that compare with the rest of the country? Are they also buying thousands of acres of additional parkland, and are they increasing the amount of money that's being spent on parks, or are we about to face the same issue that caused the deterioration of the city parks in New York in the 1970s?
Well, it's an interesting question and hard to answer simply. I mean, every city is different. Every city has a different kind of leadership, has a different set of factors, whether or not they have a strong Parks Department or a weak Parks Department, whether they've got a strong philanthropic community. All of these things play into how cities are faring. But I guess in general, every city is trying to figure out how it's going to fund its parks. The municipal budgets are being cut. Certainly in Washington, there has been very little funding for urban parks, and I think we're going to see less of that in the future. So what we do to make up for the fact that we're not going to have the public dollars that we had in the past, I want to highlight a couple of examples that just show how New York differs from some other cities. Minneapolis is an interesting example because they actually have a park and recreation board that is elected by the public every 4 years, and it's a separate taxing entity that gets taxes gets its funding from property taxes. But as I said, it's a specified portion of of that money goes directly to the park, so the Parks Department is not in competition with schools and libraries and that sort of thing. And I think as a result, Minneapolis has a phenomenal park system. But that model is not typical. But it is one way that a few cities have been able to weather this economic.
It has been that way since 1883 when it was created. That is to say, and I know that Commissioner Stern tried to achieve a similar sort of thing, and that is to have a dedicated tax, real estate tax, that would go directly to parks. The other variant that's interesting, I think, is Boulder, which has a sales tax. And its sales tax is over 1% that goes to parks. But unlike Minneapolis, it goes only to parks, but it has to be decided upon by the city council. In Minneapolis, there's an elected parks board, and the elected parks board decides what happens to that money, and it isn't in competition, as you say. And I think those are very different sorts of things, and different ways of managing. And so my question to Allison is, listening to what's going on in these other cities, how do you think New York compares? What things do you think we're doing that might be interesting things to experiment with further?
Well, first of all, I think that the primary, we still need to depend on public dollars for parks. And we need to fight continually with every budget cycle for more money for parks and continue to highlight their importance to the city. But as we are seeing more and more, they are falling farther and farther down on the wrong path for public safety and education. And so we do have to think more creatively. There are a lot of, as you say, there are other tax structures, there are property taxes, perhaps there are all sorts of different models, a number of tax financing models. Then there's park improvement districts, which is a type of tax model that is being explored. There's also the concept that we've been interested in for a number of years. There are a lot of concessions that are run in the parks around the city. They need an awful lot of money, and most of those revenues go back into the general fund. Now, there are parks.
Stop you moment.
That's a lie.
People do not know what the general fund is. General fund is all the revenue that comes into the city of New York, and the Office of Management and Budget creates a budget out of that money, and it is eagle-eyed in terms of making sure that it goes to no particular use that doesn't go through the mayor and then the city council. And what Allison is coming to is, here's a situation where the parks are generating the money, but the money is not going back to the parks.
And there are a number of cities across the country and in our national park system and in our state park system where a portion of the concessions revenue is given back, sometimes to the park itself that's generating it, sometimes to the parks department.
Goes to the conservancy boss's salary.
Shut up. And what's most interesting to us,
I ain't worried if I'm arrested.
a real, a viable part of the solution and their living parts is that a portion of that money go back to the department because a lot of the concessions the money is generated in a handful, the majority of the money is generated in a handful of the nicer parks, the nicer neighborhoods with the demand and the foot traffic that we sustain. It's the park department who actually notices that and could disperse that money to the other parks, to the neighborhood parks.
They're trying to avoid a lawsuit. They're not doing me any favor. They're not respecting my rights. They're just trying to avoid trouble for them.
And again, I'm not, you know, I'm not their spokesperson, I'm not anyone's, you know. So all I'm saying is that they've told the NYPD that as long as you abide by what you said you were going to do your West Palm protest, then they're not going to just relaying.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you telling me. I understood that though, but I appreciate it.
So,
And you know I like both of you very much.
yeah, and we're just trying to.
And normally I wouldn't feel I had to do this, but this is a total setup, and it's got to be exposed.
The park system in New York,
the audience who
I'm going to put this questions to
Good.
and if you go to a large multi-purpose field,
We'll see.
Prospect Park or Central Park or Campbell Park,
it would be kind of
you
interesting
can toss
to
a
see if,
frisbee around,
because you
play
always
cricket, or you can lie in the shade,
so I think
read a book, and one of
friends,
my money,
people who
the most
support you
important
in
contribution of the park
Surprised to me.
that it helps
They'd lynch me right now if they thought they could get away with
in
it.
which everybody
masses might-
can participate in the park without intruding on one another. What do you think about the paid fees for set-asides for ball fields and such things that I see when I go around the country and other cities?
Well, I think these are decisions that every community has to make for itself. And I think Denver actually has been grappling with this issue where they wanted to charge a fee for a movie night. And so they tried to figure out, will this work for that community? Could they charge, maybe hold the event one night a month and
Get ready, Jack.
bring in some revenue to help offset the cost of keeping those parks open. Personally, parks need to be open. They are part of our public realm. But I think the question is, obviously, how do we pay for them? I think that there are lots of opportunities to think creatively about this. There's a great example in Boston where there's a park that's actually built over a parking garage. It's called Post Office Square. And all of the revenue from that parking garage goes to keep the park going. Now, obviously, we can't have parking garages under all of our parks, but I think that there's a lot of opportunity to think more creatively about revenue generation.
I'm pleased you used the example because that's the page illustration in my chapter on funding for parks. There are lots of different things. One of the great heroes, I think, in the city is the work that's been done by Dan Biederman at the Bryant Park Conservancy. My office used to be half a block away, and you go at lunchtime, and there were more than 2,000 people there. You go at 5 o'clock, and they pay for the park with the rents that they get from the restaurant that's there. They have free movies on the other hand. They have free concerts at noon time. And the city, when the park was turned over to the corporation, was paying $250,000 every year to maintain that park. Eventually, I don't know whether Henry Stern or Adrian was responsible, but one of the parks commissioners said, "You don't need us anymore, and you promise that when you don't need us, you'll do this entirely alone."
Mayor Giuliani?
Well, or whatever it is today, Bryant Park is free for all of us. It doesn't cost us a cent. And the city of New York isn't spending a cent there. It continues to be owned by the city of New York. Its management is supervised by the Parks Commissioner. And it's another way of doing it. And part of the way they do that is not just the rent from the restaurants, such as they have, as a matter of fact, in Post Office Square with the place where you can get bagels in the morning on the way to work. But they also tax the properties all the way around the park, and that pays for some of the bigger contributions. Each one of these parks operates in a very different way. And I'd like to ask the commissioner at this point, seeing that some of these parks are actually raising money, whether that's Central Park, or that's Bryant Park, or others, what does that do to the overall operation of the park system?
Well, the advent of groups raising money for parks really goes back a long way. In fact, the very first public-private partnership in City Park was far longer ago than anyone can imagine here. 1733, the first municipal park so chartered, Bowling Green Park, which was given to the city for a very nominal rent, but taken care of by local business owners, the property owners. So, in fact, that was a public-private partnership at the very dawn of parks. You have to sort of skip forward a few centuries to the very really first public-private partnership for park here in Park Avenue, where the neighbors of Park Avenue wanted to do something in memory of the boys who had died in World War II. and started putting out Christmas trees in their honor, and then raised money for flowers. And that was sort of the first public-private partnership to help maintain a park. And then the big one, of course, happens with Central Park Conservancy, where citizens get involved in the life of the park. But the reality is that other than perhaps a dozen parks, there aren't going to be that many parks that have a significant amount of private funding going into them. The average park, the vast majority of parks are going to be supported primarily by city tax dollars, with this exception, which is the role played by volunteers in parks. And these are people who are advocates in the best sense, but they're advocates who advocate with their hands and with their minds in a positive way for parks, who come out every day and clean instead of complaining, and who get involved and to organize block associations and to do cleanups and open and close the park and do these things. And if you say, well, the government should do that, yeah, government should do everything. Government is increasingly bound by laws, court decisions, and all kinds of pension costs, all kinds of things that are immutable that you have to pay for. You have no choice. So governments are essentially going bankrupt, paying for these costs that you have no choice paying. And then things like libraries and other associations and things that aren't considered to be important go by the wayside.
I meant you to save some tape for the arrest if it happens, not to waste even more on that.
And
Go back to your
both
spot.
those cases, you had two very valuable pieces of real estate. The Hudson River Park, you had all of these shipping piers that were no longer needed, but were owned by the city and state of New York. And the same thing for Brooklyn Bridge Park. And the city and state spent hundreds of millions of dollars to develop these new parks in areas where they used to make money. So instead of having areas making money for the city and state, they spent money developing parks. And in both cases said, look, in terms of the Hudson River Park, they said, through an act of the state legislature, the enabling legislation, this park must be self-supporting, i.e., you must earn revenue in this park within portions of the park. They specify which those portions would be certain years. It would pay for the ongoing maintenance of the park because the park would be very expensive to maintain. Anything built along the waterfront is very expensive to maintain. A similar thing was done through an agreement by then Governor Pataki and Mayor Giuliani that at Brooklyn Bridge Park, the park would also be self-sustaining. This has not been without controversy. And people say, why should it be self-sustaining? The city government should pay for it. And you could say that's a perfectly valid opinion. Except the city government probably won't pay for it. And you have a choice between doing interesting, unusual government-to-government partnerships, funding mechanisms, park improvement districts, special taxing districts, public-private partnerships, or not doing it. And what's happened in New York is they've decided to do these things, and it's not one size fits all. People say, why can't we have a Central Park Conservancy for every park? And the answer is you can't, because you have this unusual concentration of very philanthropic people living in large numbers in tall buildings surrounding the park. That's not duplicated in other cities around the country. That's why other cities can't do something to rival Central Park. They try. They do conservancies, but it's much smaller, much less money, many fewer members. So I think what you've seen over the last 30 years is a series of sort of laboratory experiments. Here's where we were in the 70s. Government monopoly, parks in terrible shape, and now, 30 years later, parks generally in pretty good shape, and a lot of very experimental things happening. Non-profit partnerships, revenue being generated in parks, government-to-government partnerships, voluntary organizations, groups of volunteers. And this is a sort of crucible. And people come now from all over the world, because even in Europe they're having fiscal problems and saying, gee, we're not sure how to pay for this park, how to pay for these things. They come to New York and say, how did you do this? How is it the citizens of their own volition will donate $25 or $30 million a year to take care of a public park? Isn't that what taxes are for? And they're understanding now in many other cities that the taxes aren't enough, that we want that kind of citizen involvement.
Allison, yeah. But one of the things that strikes me, we've been talking about these very large, glamorous parks. And we have a number of them that are brand new, that didn't exist 30 years ago. We We got Fresh Hills in Staten Island, that's several thousand acres. We have the Hudson River Park, which we didn't have before. We have the High Line, we have the Brooklyn Bridge Park, we have Gantry State Park. What about small little things in neighborhoods? What, as you go around the city, what do you
all
notice?
about the money.
Well, maybe you're not old enough as I am. I'm gray hair. But what do you see in the way of very small parks?
Property
And how does that work?
values.
Well, I'll say a few things. We have one of our research tools that we use is called the report card on parks, and we've been doing it for 8 years. And when we first developed the methodology and took it out and started grading the maintenance in the parks, a lot of the parks that and they were in an outer borough, under-resourced neighborhoods. There were very poor scores. Not across the board, but there were a lot of poor scores. And we are just now working on the data that we collected last summer. And I will tell you, we're using the exact same methodology. The surveyors are trained exactly the same way, very strict. The scores are consistently going up every year. So while we still feel it's our duty to point out the weaknesses in the system, overall, there are great improvements just in the last 8 years, not to mention since the 70s and the 80s. So first I would say that the parks are in better shape than they were 5 and 10 years ago. But also, a lot of that is due to their very targeted, specific strategies that the Parks Department has developed that get funded by the council, such as these summer playground associates and summer staff that go and just do a killer job doing targeted maintenance, targeted programming in these playgrounds. Now, every budget cycle that I've been around for, those programs are up on the chopping block. And we have to scramble and we fight and we show up everywhere we can and we have to take meetings as frequently as possible with the council members, and they have come through and we've funded them again and again. But it's a couple of these really great programs that are working. And also there's more and more volunteer involvement, and the Partnerships for Parks and are doing a great job training these volunteers, giving them the resources they need to communicate with their community better. But there's still room for growth.
Before I ask Catherine a question, I want to bring one up myself. One that was started by Commissioner Stern and became a huge part of the program under Commissioner Dennehy, and that's the Green Streets program. We now have over 2,300 traffic triangles, or ex-traffic triangles, that now have signs saying Green Streets. They've got flowers, they've got bushes, they've got trees, they attract birds, they are lowering the ambient temperature in certain places in the city. It's a major change, and it's everywhere. And I find them, no matter which neighborhood I go into. Having mentioned all of these things, I want to get to Catherine. You heard about the report card about these neighborhood parks. What kind of report card do you give to the kinds of things that we've been trying to do in New York, and how does it compare with rest of the country?
Well, I have to say that we look to, we being the City Parks Alliance and the network of all of the urban park leaders around the country, we look to New York as a leader. They are, by and large, really redefining what parks are for our cities. And in fact, there's a postcard that you all take. We're going to be organizing an international urban parks conference here in New York next summer. We selected New York because of all of these innovative models that you have been testing. I think one of the key things to keep in mind is how parks are really they're changing from something that's sort of apart from the city to something that's fully integrated into the city. And I think this is an important point for future funding. The more that we can say that parks are an integral part of housing and transportation and safety and environmental sustainability and workforce development and community development, and really show how that works, I think the greater likelihood it is that we'll be able to get more more public funding for these places. And I think New York is just doing a phenomenal job, not only with the way that you've set up the whole system of public-private partnerships, where you do have a conservancy that's connected to a large signature park, but then you have a nonprofit that's serving all the neighborhood parks. And you have local groups like the Bronx River Alliance and the New York Restoration Project and Prospect Park Alliance that is doing phenomenal work and engaging the local community and really connecting the park to the local social and economic infrastructure. I mean, I think the example of Prospect Park, where they're working with the Department of Ed and the Brooklyn Botanic Garden to create a whole high school where the park is part of the curriculum is extraordinary, and one that we look to as a model. I mean, we have people from around the world who say, ask me, what are the most innovative models in the country? And I often point them to that. So I think the more that we can think about how we really put these parks to work, the healthier they'll be. I mean, I think ultimately the more funding we get.
Before we open this up to questions from the audience, I think it's only fair that I ask my three colleagues, is there anything you'd like to ask me?
Well, I would ask you this. Here in New York, I think in other parts of the country, the newest buzzword in terms of park design and management is sustainability. And sustainability means a lot of different things. It means building your green street so that it captures the stormwater runoff from the street and processes it through the plants and through the soil so it can be phyto and bioremediated into the soil rather than going straight into the storm sewer and overwhelming the sewers that combine two overflows. And everywhere we designing the parks now, we're trying to capture the stormwater. In the old days, we have a combined sewer system here in New York City. Basically, that means you get your sewage from your toilets and sinks that combines with the stormwater runoff. And when there's a heavy rain event like we had today, everything backs up and you get the raw sewage flowing into the harbor. Not a good thing. But to change that and have separate...
Is this part of the raw sewage, what's coming out now?
Oh, shut up.
The said you're going to be quiet. I'd be quiet or get out.
Are you going to spank me if I don't? Go ahead. Be my guest. You've done it many times.
Shut up.
Oh, call him back.
You said you'd be quiet. I just honored that. Quiet.
Why don't you honor something you've ever said? The biggest liar in the New York City government.
Shut up.
Every single thing you say is a lie.
Avery, would you?
And this panel of flunkies isn't going to call you on it.
Everybody in this audience money.
How much you want?
We'll be paid for this.
Anyway, so we have this combined sewer system, and one of the things you want to try to do is capture the stormwater before it goes into the sewers. So we're trying to do that, but sustainability also means planting lots of trees so you can lower the ambient temperature. Trees capture pollution, they capture particulate matter, they give oxygen. All of these things are part of sustainable design, and it's key to everything that we're doing. It's key to the whole Plan NYC that Bloomberg has put together to make the city greener. We've worked very hard in places like East Harlem and the South Bronx to reduce air pollution, which can contribute to asthma. These are places with high asthma rates.
Is that why you're spraying pesticides there? Why are you spraying the poor and black and Latino neighborhoods?
For God's sake.
Adrian, the question.
Why do you spray poison on those people? Prospect Park, tomorrow night, they're spraying it. Nerve gas invented by the Nazis, that's what they're spraying there. Bullshitability.
One of the things that I find is a problem in the whole discussion of sustainability is that New York began with a designer, Frederick Olmsted, who had a conception of sustainability which the rest of the country hasn't yet figured out. which is central to New York, and it goes beyond simply the capture of stormwater and the filtering of it, beyond the filtration of the air from the leaves. Olmsted was a very clever man, and he understood that people would come in huge quantities to the parks. He talked about this for the Yosemite National Park. He talked about this for Niagara Falls. He talked about this for Central Park as well. And the designs that he came up with anticipated throngs of people coming to the parks who just wanting to do what they would do naturally would automatically destroy large sections of it. And what I don't see in these other places, and I do see in the very foundation of what New York has been doing, is an appreciation that human beings are part of the natural system that needs to be sustained. The second thing that I would say that I think is being understood everywhere in the country, but not in the terms of sustainability, is that the parks have to be politically and socially sustainable as well. And I'm reminded of what the condition of the parks were when the Lindsay administration arrived. And while there was huge criticisms of the events that were scheduled that trampled Central Park, what Commissioner Hogan and Mayor Lindsay achieved was to regain a constituency for the parks. The people who came to hear Barbra Streisand thought, well, we can come back to the park. It's not as dangerous anymore. And the profound understanding that you must be politically sustainable and that you need supporters. We have been talking for the last hour about community groups, public participation, everything from planting gardens all the way to cleaning up the Bronx River. That is part of political and social sustainability. And I think that there's a great deal that can be learned about all of this. And so I would say some of it I see elsewhere, and some of it I think we have a long way to go before parks advocates will understand that it has to be much broader. Allison, you wanted to ask a question, and we'll open it up. Okay? Then we have a microphone. I repeat, we would like to ask questions.
I have a question.
And try to keep the time to an absolute minimum. If we have time, we'll come back to you for a second or third question.
Because of the disruption, unfortunately, our time is very short, so we can only take a limited number of questions.
I have a question.
People who have not had their opportunity yet to have other people to have a turn.
Right here.
First, thank you all for coming and speaking. This really has been very interesting. And you've spoken about how far New York City parks have come over the past 40 years, and I wasn't alive then. But I'm wondering, where do you think city parks will be 40 years in the future? Thank you.
That's a great question, and it's something that we've only been... In government, you rarely have a chance to think about the future. You're basically thinking about the next 5 minutes, like how do you survive the next 5 minutes. Particularly in tough budget times. So it's very rare that the city steps back and says, okay, where do we want to be 25 or 30 years from now? And the Regional Planning Association has done it. And a lot of the things we now take for granted today, certain transportation systems and highway systems and bridges, were things were advocated for by some very brilliant thinkers and planners. And of course, we in government and the politicians take credit for this, but you have to remember that these are the visionaries and the planners and the advocates who come up with these ideas, really are the founders for it. But so we've been thinking about this. What should this city be in the next 30 years? And one of them is we need to have, there isn't a lot of vacant land sitting around to turn into parks, very little. So you have to nip at the edges, and you have to convert brownfields. So a lot of the former factories that will never be factories again, the waterfront that will never be used for shipping again because the shipping has moved to the deep ports and all containerized. Things like the High Line, take an old railroad track and save it to be an elevated park. Part of the goal of NYC is to have a park or playground within a 10-minute walk of every New Yorker. How do you do that if you can't buy land? It's unlikely that you can go in and tear down people's homes to build parks. So that has happened. The city has used eminent domain to acquire land for parks. But one of the ways, a very ingenious way of adding more recreational space, which we did recently, was Department of Education school playgrounds, which were used only by the schools between 9 and 3 on weekdays and then locked up the rest of the time. And we sort of sat and look at these things and look at neighborhoods like Brownsville and Borough Park and other parts of the city that have very few parks and say, couldn't we just open these up? And for many years the answer was no, because the Department of Education didn't want to be bothered cleaning up the playgrounds after a busy weekend. And so once the Department of Education was brought under narrow control, it's much easier to work with them and say, we will work with the Trust for Public Lands and take almost 300 schoolyards and convert them, improve them, work with the schools, with the kids to redesign them, and convert them to full-time playgrounds. That is, school uses them from 9 to 3, from 3 o'clock through the evening, weekends, summers, they get used. So what you had effectively was a 30% increase in playgrounds almost overnight. So it's those kinds of things. Transitioning old, barely usable parks into more usable parks is one of the ways to do that. And God only knows what the park of the future will look like. I mean, technology changes so fast. Sports that people want to do change so fast. You could not have imagined things like skate parks 30 years ago. You could not have imagined competitive cycling parks. You could have imagined climbing walls and high wires and things that people want to do. Kayaking in the rivers.
Condos in parks.
Why don't we try another question?
Hi, this question is for Catherine Angel. Commissioner Benepe mentioned Brooklyn Bridge Park having a new model. That model includes...
Get ready, Jack.
Includes building luxury housing within the footprint of the park, and the park's annual maintenance fee. Do you think cities around the country should copy this model?
Thank you.
Hands up. Hands up.
I'm not resisting. You don't have to damage me. I'm not resisting you in any way.
Never damage.
Benepe is a criminal. He's having me arrested to silence me because he doesn't want you to know what a criminal he is. He's stealing your public parks. Arrest Adrian Benepe! Bloomberg sucks!